What is up, gamers? Welcome back to Game Brigade. Thank you for joining me. My name is Brian, and today we are counting down the top 50 games of all time from 2024, at least my list from 2024. And today is the top 20. We finally broke into the top 20. These games are all bangers. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these games. I think all of them are great in their own right. And I would love to share them with you. So we're going to be starting off with number 20 and going down to number 11. Now, I do have a little segment that I'm going to add in here that talks about how I choose the games that have gone on my list. If you find that to be helpful, I encourage you to watch it, but you can always use the timestamps down below to skip ahead to the next section. Before we get to the list, I think it's important to talk about how I formulate this list. How did I come to the conclusions for the games and where they're placed? And I use a 3-tier system when I'm placing games on there. The first thing I like to ask myself is, how good is this game? How well did this game achieve the goals it's trying to achieve? Was it fun to play? Overall, is reception of my fellow gamers relatively good on this game? And if those are all true, those types of games will find themselves higher on the list. The next thing that I like to look at is, how easy is it for me to remember this game? And how easy is it for me to teach this game? Ease of play is very important. I want to make sure that this is a game that I could bring to the table relatively easier, make sure I can learn the rules. They are imprinted easily in my memory. And if a game is able to do that, it'll find itself higher on this list. And finally, I always think this is probably the most biased part of any of these lists, but the third one is, how much did I personally enjoy the game? There are games that people consider bad games, but there are people who are champions for those games. It's just a fact of life. So there are some games that I just love. I also do believe that recency bias can play into an effect on some of these lists. Okay, now that you've familiarized yourself with how I choose the games that go on my list, I will mention this is a continuation of the giveaway section that we have here on the channel. We are giving away a copy, a base game pledge of Avalon the Riven Vale from Shadowborn Games. Our previous video was the first video in the giveaway challenge, or the giveaway, whatever, the giveaway challenge. Whatever you, to enter the giveaway, you're going to leave a comment on this video, but there'll be specific terms and discussing what that is. That'll be later in the video in terms of how you're going to enter the giveaway. But just know you must be subscribed to this video, and you must leave a comment on this video or one of my other videos that has the giveaway mentioned in it, doing the specific comment requirements. But without further ado, let's get into the list, starting with number 20, Andromeda's Edge from Cardboard Alchemy. This game is kind of an enigma for me. First off, let's start with that. The Dwellings of Eldervale, the original idea that this game came from, was one of my top games for a long time. In fact, it was my highest rated board game in terms of reviewed on the channel games for a very long time. But I eventually got rid of it because I found that I had done everything that I've wanted to do with Dwellings. It wasn't exciting me as much as I wanted to. But here comes Andromeda's Edge with a theme that I'm more personally into. I love space and whatnot, and promises to kind of fix some of the problems that you had with Dwellings of Eldervale. So here we are, Andromeda's Edge, and I do think it's a great game. It's a really well-played game as you explore the galaxy. You have kind of different types of options in terms of how you want to approach it, because you have different types of technology or tracks or whatever that you can kind of move up to get different types of rewards as you're trying to build out your little guys or whatever on the map. I think it's good. I still don't know how great it is, and I think 20 is probably a good fit for it. Some people call this the best game of all time. So that's kind of like where I'm fighting against, and I have a hard time justifying it to be at those levels. I do need more time with this game to really kind of dive deeper into all the elements and see all the kind of variety and variables that could occur in the game. But I do think it's a good game. I think it's worth trying. I think it's recommended to go out and get if you haven't played it. I think it could fit for many people in their collection. Do I think it's the greatest game of all time? No. I think that's an overreach, but I do think it's a good game and it's worth trying out. Number 19 is a new to the list And a real big surpriser for me, actually, when this hit. It is Tyrants of the Underdark, the board game, a Dungeons and Dragons game. Now, this is a deck builder. I don't own this game. I would love to buy this game. I don't own this game. It's in the Board Game Club's collection, though. This is a deck building game set in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. And I already love deck builders. But this deck builder has a unique kind of twist to how these games are generally played. Now, of course, you're going to have the row in front of you where you're going to be purchasing cards to add to your deck. Those decks are formed from several different decks. I think there's maybe 6 or so. Actually, I don't own the game, so I don't know. But there's a certain amount of decks that have kind of their own identity in what they do. And you're going to take 2 of them and you're going to kind of combine them together, which is going to create a unique experience with the game because you have different variables of what types of combinations you can make. And when that, you're going to have obviously your cards you're going to be buying from. But the unique aspect that makes this game kind of special for me is that it has an area control portion of the game with an entire board setup where you're putting your pieces on the board, trying to gain control of different regions, have area majority by having more of your pieces in different territories than your opponents, as you then can vie for territory for these victory points. It adds an extra element of the game, which you're not just playing the cards for the combos of the cards, which is what most deck builders are trying to do, trying to build a different kind of combo and chain things together. You're also having to worry about what's happening on the board and where people are positioning their players. Who do you have to take points from? Because they can get incremental points for having control over the period, or they can get additional income for their buy phase. It's a very, very interesting game, and I don't hear it talked about enough. So that's kind of why I wanted to champion it. I was glad to see that it was kind of finding itself in my top 50, and not just the top 50, it eclipsed the top 20. Like, that is so cool that it made it here. Now, there are 2 versions of the game. There's an older version that has little plastic miniatures that are going on the board. If you can find that copy for a good price, I think that's the one I'd recommend picking up, because the other one, I believe, just has like cardboard chits, and that's not as cool as little plastic figures for the same price. So that is Tyrants of the Underdark, the board game, the Dungeons and Dragons version. Coming in at number 18 is Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones was 16 last year, so we've seen a steady fall from Too Many Bones. Originally in my top 10, top 16, now we're at 18. And Too Many Bones is another interesting game for me. Too Many Bones is a game from Chip Theory Games, which is an adventure game where you are going to be choosing one of your gear locks, one of the characters in the game, and they all have a unique set of skills and abilities that they're going to be utilizing. And the game has a very interesting dice mechanism where you're going to be assigning dice to different types, specific dice to different types of abilities, and those dice, when you roll them, will perform an ability. And sometimes you only get one use of those dice in each of your encounters. Too Many Bones is an adventure game where you're going to be traveling along a path, doing different types of combat or different types of skill checks or whatever, as you work your way to the final boss of the scenario that you've chosen. Too Many Bones for a long time was one of my favorite games. It was like a pinnacle game for me. It was special in the fact that it was unique. It has a unique component type with the hard chips and dice and neoprene mats. It just definitely gives you a different type of feel from a standard board game. The gameplay was unique and interesting and fun, but Too Many Bones is a lifestyle game. It's a game that is very rules deep, very hard for people to grasp and understand all the nuances of the encounters and all the rules layering of the enemies and baddies that you're fighting. It's a very complex game, and I think that's one of the reasons why Too Many Bones has been falling on my list, because, again, accessibility is one of the factors that I encounter or decide when I'm making my list. So while I think Too Many Bones is a special game, it's an incredible experience. Being a lifestyle game is difficult, and when I define lifestyle games, I'm defining it as a game that requires more of your time to really get the most out of it. It wants to be the primary game that you're playing in your collection. And I think it deserves that in a way, but Too Many Bones is aging. There's more games coming out. And I could argue that the new Elder Scrolls game, released also from Chip Theory Games, takes the Too Many Bones idea and feel and parts of the uniqueness that makes that game special, but makes it more accessible for the average gamer. Now, I don't have that game. I would love to play that game. I played the prototype, and I played it with a special, kind of like a content creator invite, and I played it then as well. And I really enjoyed it, and I would love to get my hands on the full copy to give a really good sense of what the game is like, because I do think from my initial play and my interpretations of what I've seen, I think Elder Scrolls might be beating out Too Many Bones in a lot of the ways that Too Many Bones was winning. So I recommend Too Many Bones. It's a very hefty system to get into. It's a fun game. I'm questioning where it will fall coming future years. I'd like to know what you guys think in terms of that, and let me know. But that is number 18, Too Many Bones. Coming in at 17 is Endless Winter. Now, this was 16 last year on the list, so basically still finding itself in the same spot. And this game is one that I really, really love. In fact, at one point, this was in my top 10, and now it's still in my top 20. I could see this slowly slipping, though, over time. Now, Endless Winter is a game that gives you the option to do multiple different avenues of how you're going to want to approach it in its deck building. Another deck builder, by the way. It's deck building mechanics. So the idea, it's a worker placement deck building game, but the unique twist to Endless Winter is that there are a bunch of different types of almost micro games within the system that have their own elements. You have a area control section with your migrating tribes. You have a polyomino kind of weird thing with the petroglyph thing. You've got these tracks you're trying to go up to. You have a set collection with animals. You have and then you have, of course, the deck building. You've got burying your cards for additional points. There are a lot of different ways that you could approach this game, and plus there's also a lot of modular expansions that can kind of change the flavor of the game up. But there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this game, and I think that's what originally excited me about this game. It makes me want to play it. Now, after say 10 or so, 15 so plays, we're starting to see kind of I believe the word is like a homogenous like effect where everyone just always kind of does the same thing. Like, you kind of get comfortable with what you enjoy. For me, I enjoy deck building and adding in different types of the tribe members to my deck to utilize during the night phase or burying them, etc. While other people enjoy the set collection with the animals or expanding with the area control. And I don't know if it's a fault of the game. It could obviously 100% be a fault of my group, but it kind of loses its luster when everyone just always does the same thing. You don't see people branching out. Now, again, I don't think that's a problem with the game. I do think that's a problem with the game group, but I wonder if it's something that would be common with more game groups than just mine. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that one. Let me know if you actually play Endless Winter. How does your game group approach this game? Do you guys approach it in the same sense where people just kind of stick with what they're comfortable with and what works for them? Or do you have people trying different avenues and trying different strategies? I'd like to know. But yeah, Endless Winter is a great game. I think it's very approachable. I think the theme is very on point. And I believe it was Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower who harped on this game because he said the theme wasn't very good. And I might not be Tom Vassell. I'm pretty sure it was someone on the Dice Tower, though. And I'm like, what are you talking about? The theme of this game, every action that you do, to me, seems so in line with what the game is asking you to do. Like the moving around the area control, you're migrating, the building up the spire. Like, those are your petroglyphs or the things that they would do back then. I don't know, the gathering animals and hunting them and getting different types of food or supplies from killing those animals. It just seems to in line with what you would expect a native tribes person to do. It just seems like a really good analogy for a board game. But yeah, I like this game. I think it's a great game. Now, I just got Unconscious Mind. I have yet to play Unconscious Mind. I'm a little nervous that it might, contest a little bit. We'll see. I haven't played Unconscious Mind, so I don't know if they're going to fight at all in terms of spots. We'll see. But that is number 17. Endless Winter. And today we're going to go, before we get to number 16, I'm going to talk about the giveaway comment. I want to put that in here. So we're going to do hashtag QOTD. I remembered it this time for question of the day. And the question of the day that I want to ask my audience is, what are the games that you would see that are in your top 5? I want to know what people are playing. What are the top 5 games that are in your collection as of right now? And if you want to put more reasonings as to why they're there than just listing them out, that's great for me because I read every comment. I want to know what you guys think. And this comment will get you an entry into the giveaway. So make sure you leave that comment down below. All right, so let's go into number 16. Another game I don't have in the collection right now, and this might be the first cheating game in terms of like I'm cheating the list here because the game is not officially released yet, but it's one that I played the prototype of, and the prototype was effectively a finished game, and the game blew me away. And I've done coverage of this game, and it's Luthier. Okay, Luthier is the game where you are playing as a musicianal family who builds different types of instruments. Who also is, their luthier is like a profession. Know that. But the game sets you in this interesting setting. Again, not a theme that I would like initially be attracted to, but it does it so well that you're just brought into it. You've got people that you're trying to entertain and do quests for effectively by providing them different types of goals. You've got some musical instruments you're trying to repair. You're doing a bunch of things that all relate to this kind of world, and it plays very well in itself. Now, if you go back in my list to On Mars, one of the things I talked about in On Mars is how all these actions are kind of intertwined and they kind of have a connection point. Now, this is not as intense as On Mars. On Mars is like still, again, bar none, the best. Every action is connected to it in some way. But the actions in Luthier are very rewarding, and they do provide you a sense of, well, I need to make sure I do this so I can do this so I can do this. Like, you have a chaining actions, and I love that Euro games really can do that. And when a Euro game can have a satisfying action selection system, but with a theme that makes sense to the world and the things you're doing. I don't want to just push cubes. The push cubes would have no real sense to what I'm doing and feeling like I'm not part of the game. I want to feel like I'm part of the world or part of the things that I'm doing, and that's fun and enjoyable, and I'm fighting for the first chair of the flute or whatever. I think that's cool. So Luthier surprised me. I'm not a huge Euro guy. It's not something that drives me to it, but I do appreciate very good mechanically made games. So while this game is not officially released yet, I don't think the prototype to the release version is going to change much, if at all. And I'm very excited to say that this game is in my top 20. It's a super, super good game. I recommend checking it out if you haven't. Check out the late pledge or look for it when it comes out to retail. War of the Ring, specifically, this is the second edition. This game has been my dueling 1v1 board game of choice for a few years now. This game is so incredible. This is from Ares Games, and effectively this is a strategy war game pitting the forces of evil and shadow, Sauron, versus the heroes, the alliance, humans, elves, and dwarves, as they fight for survival. As Frodo and the Fellowship attempt to throw the ring back into Mordor. This game is dripping with flavor, and I don't know if I've ever played a game other than maybe say Rebellion that hasn't given me a sense that I am living the story as I'm playing the game. There are action cards, like the Ents are attacking, and you read the card and you just feel the power in the thematics of the game. Now, mechanically, the game is rules dense. It's a hard game to get into. It's not one I think is the most easy to approach for many players. But if you are willing to give this game the time to learn the system and to play it a few times, it is extremely rewarding. One of the coolest mechanics that this game has is that the asymmetry between the Alliance and Sauron, the units are the units. They do the same thing. But what's different is that the Alliance, they have a limited amount of units. So every piece of plastic that's on the board is valuable. So if you lose a battle, or if you make a poor decision and push out and do something that you shouldn't have done and you lose pieces, those pieces cannot be easily replaced. They go back to the box. You cannot recruit those pieces again. You have a limited supply, and the supply is based on each of the races. So there's a limited amount of elves, there's a limited amount of dwarves, there's a limited amount of humans, and so you have to manage your forces as you try to hold up in your fortresses, while Sauron can just keep amassing the forces of shadow, pulling in humans from the east, bringing in a bunch of different types of orcs and trolls, just offering, and goblins, just a bunch of shit thrown at you, right? It's so cool. But then there's a sub game where Frodo is working his way to Mordor in a hidden form. And so as the shadow player, you get more dice that you get to allocate to different types of actions. But you might want to allocate more dice to search for Frodo because you want to know where he is. That way you can sick your Nazgul on him and prevent him from getting to your shadows. Or you might want to just allocate your armies to actions, to recruiting, to moving, to dealing damage. Those are things you can do. It's a really, really well-made game. It's impressively how fun and good this game is, and it brings a strong balance between both factions. I think that when you look like professionally in terms of like the world competitive scene, it was like 51% win ratio, so close enough to 50-50. You always want to be as close as you can to 50% in terms of win ratio. So very, very solid game. I'll flip it over here to the backside so you can see some of the pictures here. You have those action cards. The other cool thing is when the game starts, the Fellowship starts. All the characters in the Fellowship that you would know are together. Boromir, Legolas, Gimli, like those are all in the Fellowship. But you can choose as the Alliance player to send those heroes to go perform different types of missions or objectives that you might need them to do, reducing the amount of people staying in the Fellowship. And if you get to a point where you've sent them all off, then you're going to be adding Golem to the Fellowship. Like there's just these really cool, micro theming into the game that just makes this such a fun game. Now, Ares just released the re-release of the collector's edition, which has been incredibly hard to find, very expensive. It was like $3,000. It was like between $1,500 and $3,000 on the open market. If you are looking for something like that, they just re-released it for $800 on their website. Might be worth checking out if you're looking for like a collector's piece for War of the Ring. So there you go. That is a banger for sure. Coming in at number 14 is Kemet, Blood and Sand. I'm not quite sure where this was last year. I know I had it on my list. I should have tracked it on here. But Kemet, Blood and Sand has been our go-to 5-player game night war game that we've had. Like we haven't had a game that has beaten this one in terms of our 5-player experience. It's a very, very well-made game. This is another area control game where players are going to start off completely symmetrical, so there's no differences between our factions. But after the very first action sequence where we're all drafting our tiles, we start to see differences in terms of where players are going to kind of go. And how that works is there are different types of power tiles in this game. And you, at the beginning of the game, are going to select as a team, as a group, which power tiles you're going to play with. And all these power tiles have a different type of theming to them. The white one is like economy. The blue one is defense. The black one is kind of a hybrid between combat and economy. The red one is purely aggression. So you have these different types of tiles that you can add to the game, and the combination and the mixtures of which ones you include kind of change the dynamic and how the game is going to be played. At 5 players, I like it because you get a full choice of 4 colors, which gets you a whole variety of them, and you could even include the expansion, which has the 5th green color. But again, you have to choose only 4 of them, which means there's some variety with the game. But then as players are taking tiles, there's only a very limited amount of different tiles. Some of them there's only 1 of options, others there's 2 options, and you can kind of build out your your pieces, making your faction completely asymmetrical from everyone else, and how you're choosing to approach the game and complete the objectives. It is a very, very exciting game. There is an expansion that's on the way from Kickstarter, which is including 2 new colors and a 6th player. I didn't back it, but 2 players in our game group did, so we'll be playing that when it delivers. I'm excited to see what it is. Now, I will say Kemet, while it's a very good game, I didn't mention this. The other thing that I really enjoy is the combat system is very fun for me. When combat occurs, every plastic piece in the board is, 1. They're just 1 power. So with a 5 power, with 5 units in each one, which is the default max amount, you start with 5 power. But those asymmetrical powers you have, can increase your combat strength, or you can have gods that can be attached to that unit, which increase their power. But what makes it very fun is each player has a set of 8 cards that are combat cards in your hand, and you're going to choose one to play, and you're going to choose one to burn, which means it's not going to be available until you've gone through all of your cards. The card you play is going to have power, damage, and shields. So the power might be how much power we're putting to the combat to win the combat. But just because you win the combat doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be defeating any of your opponent's pieces. They might just get pushed out of the zone and are still available to attack you next turn, which means you need damage. So they have blood. We have red blood and black blood. Black blood is unblockable, but the red blood is blockable. But each piece of blood that you have in your card or in your power tiles that you've drafted are going to eliminate your opponent's pieces. So that's the only way to do it. And then the shields that you can have on those cards block that blood. I like the dynamic of looking at your hand and being, okay, what is my opponent going to play? Are they going to play more power or more blood or shields? What should I do in this situation to win the battle, but also inflict the most amount of damage to my opponent so that they are not able to retaliate on me? And then, of course, the card you burn will not be available for you. So you have to make that decision as well, because you're not going to be able to use it if you get attacked again by someone else or you attack someone else on a subsequent turn. It's a very, very cool mechanic. It's probably the reason why I like Kemet so much, including the asymmetrical powers. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, Kemet is becoming a point where I might have gotten everything I've wanted out of Kemet. It's one of the reasons why I was looking at like Axis and Allies and bringing that game back in, because that's a great 5-player game, but it runs a little long the tooth at times. Well, Kemet is very solid in that 2-hour mark usually. So that's why Kemet has worked great for the game night selection. Still a great game, holds up very well for the age of this game. Now, Blood and Sand is, of course, the reprint that they did, which included all the changes, but effectively Kemet is still Kemet. It's still a great game. Really highly recommend it, and that's from Matago. So coming in at number 13 is Cthulhu Death May Die. This was number 12 last year. So again, a lot of the lists here in the top 20 are finding themselves in that same category, which I think is pretty interesting. Now, this is the new one. This is Death May Die, Fear the Unknown. I haven't had a chance to unbox this one, but I'm excited to break it out and finally play it. But Cthulhu Death May Die is basically my enjoyment game, relaxing game where I just want to have fun without having to focus too much on my, competing against my friends. A lot of the games we play are competitive games. This game is competitive, but it's competitive against the board, against the game itself, while you and your friends are trying to win. And sometimes I enjoy those games. Now, you could look at Zombicide as another one, or Massive Darkness. I think they all kind of play somewhat similar. But I thought Cthulhu Death May Die was the one that did it the best for me by adding a specific challenge with the different elder gods that you're fighting and the different scenario you're fighting, with also dealing with the insanity track and the way your individual investigators play. It's a very rewarding game, a very fun game. In fact, the late pledge for seasons 5 and 6 just launched. I'm probably going to be picking up at least the base game for that one, just to get the stretch goals and the additional content, because just like Zombicide and other games in the system, they all add on additional content and playable options for you, and I like that way the game fleshes out. But yeah, Cthulhu Death May Die, this is one that I talk about quite a bit. It's a very, very good game. A lot of people call it the beer and pretzels game, which, when I think of beer and pretzels, I just think of more of the casual gaming experience, and that's the best way I think I could describe this one to you if you were looking to add a game into your collection. So Cthulhu Death May Die, coming in at number 13, 12 last year. And the next one, I have a box, but it's way stacked away, so we're not going to be getting it. But coming in at number 12 is Chronicles of Drenagor, Age of Darkness. This was 11 last year, so just another one space falling back. And I could see this one falling back more because I haven't played it in a while. but because of the way, but it's being propped up. So remember, if you go back to how I choose the games on my list, there's 3 things I do. It could be how much I enjoy it, how easy is it to play, and does it do what it's wanting to do, and mechanically is it a good game? Like those are kind of the things that I'm looking at. I think Chronicles of Dronagor does what it's wanting to do very well. The ability to customize my character and actually make a subclass, kind of break my class into 2 different kind of tiers, is not a system I've seen done well in many other dungeon crawling games. I like being able to be a death knight, and then also, now I'm going to become a barbarian, and I get to utilize abilities from both of those classes. Like, that's super cool. Or a druid or something. Like, you kind of get those options, and the game allows you to customize in that way, and I enjoy that. Now, the biggest drawback that I had personally for Chronicles of Dronagor, and why we kind of hit a roadblock in terms of the overall campaign experience, was that the writing was very generic. There wasn't a lot of reasons to continue the story, which was the biggest problem that I had with the game. It wasn't that it was bad, but it wasn't that it was good. Does that make sense? It was just okay. It was sufficient. It was sufficient board game writing. Now, they have released additional content. We have additional expansions that I've yet to kind of dive into, which added more characters and more customization options, but giving us more of the stuff that I like. The things that I like are being able to create my character and level up and get additional abilities and become kind of a badass. Those things are fun, and that's what I enjoy. Again, the drawback for me was the writing of the game, but in terms of the scope of everything, it's still a top tier game for me, and one that I would recommend to many people. And coming in at number 11, rounding out our top 20 now, will be Clash of Cultures. This is the Monumental Edition, and this is from WizKids. Clash of Cultures is by far my favorite 4-player game, civilization game. I always have to say civilization game. And when we're looking for like that competitive, we want to build up our forces and kind of build up our economy, this is the game I go to. And when we have 4 players, this is the one we want to go to. When we have 5 players, Chem is the one we go to, right? Clash of Cultures allows you to pick one of the cultures of history: China, Egypt, England. You get it. The Vikings, different types of cultures. There's a leaders expansion here that has a different additional asymmetrical powers as well, which I think is well worth playing. You should always play with that expansion if you can. But basically, this game allows you to explore the world and kind of fight yourself and just do civilization-y things. Build your economy, get different types of technology, eventually go to war and defeat your opponents. It's a true civilization game at its finest, and it's one that I really, really enjoy. And I wish it was 5-player. I wish we could expand the board even more so we can have more exploration options. It's one that I would highly recommend getting into. Now, I've always talked about that civilization games. I don't know what it is, but there's something that's always drawing me to them, and I'm always hunting for the best ones. I've got Mosaic. I've got Monumental down here, Clash of Cultures over here. There's so many options where I'm trying to find that civilization game that gets the itch of feeling like I am the culture that I am choosing, or the civilization that I'm choosing. If I'm choosing Japan, I want to feel like I have Japanese samurai or archers or pottery, like whatever is unique to that nation. I want to feel like that is part of the game. And that's what is brought to you here with Clash of Cultures. I really think it does a very good job of bringing the game into that historical aspects, but also keeping this a game and doing it very well. So that's my favorite right now, at least, civilization game. And that's going to wrap up our top 20. The next video will be the top 10 games of all time. Where was Clash of Cultures last year? This was 14 last year, so it's actually gone up. So this is the one that kind of forced all these other games to fall down. One might have been Clash of Cultures because it jumped from 14 up to 11. I could easily have seen it hit my top 10. If we played it more, I bet you that would probably be it. But usually our game group is either 3 or 5. It's hard for us sometimes to hit that 4-player count. It's kind of like that odd number in our gaming group. And if we do hit a number 4 player, there's one other game that tends to get chosen over Clash of Cultures, and we'll talk about that when we hit our top 10. But anyways, that is going to wrap the video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did get that comment for the question, please leave your comment down below so you get your entry into the giveaway. Again, that'll be given away once I hit 10,000 subscribers. You must be a subscriber to the channel. Remember, smash the like button. While it doesn't help increase your chances of winning the giveaway, it increases your karma and helps my channel grow. So thank you guys for that. My name is Brian, and I will talk to you very soon.